appointment that was moved from both these other districts. What a neat.
We just hired a guy from one of our plants, one up in Green. He's from Groundwater, but he held a job where he was the commandant of our HTEC.
Oh, no kidding.
For a couple of years. Retired by time.
Yeah, but that's what this guy was. He's been retired since he started there in '07.
Which was our other dog here, circus dog here, used to be like
And then he worked for steel recycling out of.
Laws of law, it was like a fair trade price on residential TCs. Which is what I would say.
That's an impressive program.
When I took it, it's that it's not, yes, they do drilling and those kinds of things, but it's about character, it's about respect, it's about integrity, you know, it's about being the best version of yourself.
Still says that was the best years of training the farm we have there.
It was another session, you know, and they all break those programs, break it down by grade level. They always speak on some joke. They just use 12 grades, you know,
How was your day?
Yeah, that's. That guy went to a small Christian town. They partnered with St. Louis.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 15 seconds.
All right, clock just clicked 6:30, so I'm going to call us to order. And I think our first move is I need a motion to go to executive session to discuss the employment of a particular person or persons and litigation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's like he's a sports orthopedic, does high school, college, and the coach.
Oh, okay.
He's orthopedic for them, so hopefully he can do more.
Now I'm back over here. I'm just.
So I was like, geez.
Sorry.
Now we'll share in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Receive a motion to approve the minutes of the 12/12/23 regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Do I have to abstain if I left early? No? Okay.
Totally up to you. I've never been clear on that one. It's just been common practice to be totally missed, but.
Okay.
All right, so opening I do have a few pieces to bring up. You can see in the board docs that we had the team meet about the board member visits to the schools. This is a follow-up, I think, from December in that conversation. We had building administrators, some teaching staff. Megan and I were able to be on that call, and we put in there kind of the parameters. Jeff put that together. And the basic idea to be, we want to make sure that we're helpful, that we're building good working relationships with the school community as a whole. And that, one, that our visits, we are more than welcome to visit, but it's by invitation. We're not able to just drop by and say, I got a couple hours on a Wednesday afternoon. I'm just going to pop by the junior high and say, surprise, Kara, I'm here for the afternoon. So it's by invite of teacher or staff that we can do that. And we still can't just say, okay, we want to make sure the building administrator knows. Because again, if I'm in visiting Sherry Powers in the pre-K and Doug walks around the corner and there I'm sitting, that's not fair to him. So both invitation of the teacher and the staff, but also to make sure the building administrator knows that is happening. When we visit, following our board policy, that's there, you can see reference 3210. Also, the expectation will be after you visit the classroom and the building, when we do our board member activities, you'll give a verbal report of that visit. So that you can share the wonderful things that you discovered and give celebration of the great work that the staff is doing. And we're also encouraging the board member to follow up positively with the staff member, whether it be through a phone call or an email, just to say, hey, it was great to be in your classroom. Here's the amazing things we saw you do, and that kind of thing. So that's the piece that we're working on. I think our process that we talked about was to get some feedback from you all, what you're hearing, what you're thinking, incorporate that into the next piece. We have another meeting with that team that'll come together, and then we'll put that together and put that forward as a board policy moving forward. So, questions or comments or thoughts on the material?
I think it's very well outlined, what you guys have come up with so far.
And if you want to sit in the cafeteria, you can just go sit and have lunch. It seemed to be a little focused on staff, but I don't think that was the full intention when teachers brought it up at a retreat. I think so there's the unit of being with the children. So like the cafeteria often is talked about. So if you wanted to sit and have cafeteria food and hang out in the cafe, is that acceptable?
The way that this is there, and we can talk about this, is that would be by invite of the building administrator, or, I mean, you couldn't just say, hey, I just want to have lunch with the kids. It would be through an invitation to do that.
Then how is all the staff gonna know that they have the right to do the invite? Is
That's
it-
the next, is what the next
It's
meeting
coming up?
would be. Because one of the things, like, right, we've said all along, we want to make sure that people get that it's a good thing.
and that what the, kind of how to access it. So yeah, that'll be what we talk about in meeting 2, and then roll it out to staff so they know.
I figured we'd get the parameters and policy in place and then work on the communication plan so that everybody understands the same things and understands how the process works.
Good step forward. Yeah. Well done.
All right. So we'll bring that back to you at some point for approval as an action of the board. I don't know what we call it, a policy, I guess it would be.
Or, yeah, well, more procedure. The only reason we wouldn't do it as a policy is that then that's a formal action that the board would take as opposed to just something that we do.
Okay.
It can be repeated year after year, but as opposed to a policy.
So, but we'll bring that back before you.
Is there a way that I can be replaced with, I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding.
Did you, but you said yes though, no? Oh.
No.
Well, I told Amy just to come. I mean, you're
Okay.
more than welcome, the more the
I
merrier.
don't have
When's the next meeting?
time.
We haven't said it yet.
Oh.
We will though, we'll loop you in. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay,
Can't
and
have
so
five.
I thought
Yeah,
everybody,
you can't have 5, yeah.
I thought everybody had been invited, so I kind of just ignored it, but then,
No, and then Amy, yeah, you reminded me that you had sent me the email, and I must have transposed.
So, yeah, we'll bring this back and we'll shuffle that around, but we'll bring this back to the board before we push go on it. But we just want to get your input midstream, so we weren't tracking the wrong direction. So, all right, Superintendent?
I have a couple things to share. One is I had the opportunity to go to Mexico, New York yesterday. I went with a group of superintendents and a couple of folks from BOCES leadership to look at their junior ROTC program that they have.
Yeah.
It was outstanding. We met with 2 gentlemen that run the program. I won't do it justice, but we saw the space that their kids use. They have a cohort of 9th through 12th graders, about 85 students in the program across their building. Mexico is about 2,000 students, so not that different from us. They've had the program for quite some time. The lieutenant colonel who runs the program has been there since 2007. Their focus is yes, there is drilling as, you know, in the military field to it and look to it, but ideally what they're doing is they're trying to help the students realize their best selves. The space, the kids kept referring to their space as a professional space where they treat each other with respect and dignity. And when I walked in, got there about 11 o'clock in the morning, and there were about 25 students that were in there. I assumed it was a class because they were busy doing their thing in various size groups. That was their lunch, and they choose to come there and eat and be there, but work and improve themselves during lunch because that environment is so positive. I talked a lot to the kids. They mentioned the fact that they really felt more confident in themselves. They've made friendships and relationships that they wouldn't have otherwise done if it were just even a grade level cohort. The reason we went was it was brought up, Jeremy Belfield, who's the superintendent in Lafayette, his daughter's in that program. She attends the Mexico school. And we are investigating whether or not that's a model that we might want to bring to our BOCES. The question is, and again, it was just the opening visit, so we'll have more meetings, but what a powerful program, what a great feel the kids, some impressive kids, but it was such a great cross-section of students that with different interests and abilities. One of the girls, and I'll stop talking about it, but one of the girls who's a senior is going to Duke on a ROTC scholarship studying mechanical engineering. And what she said, she was a high flyer. She always got 100, always needed to get 100, type A personality. And she said, but I realized that I only did things that I was good at. And what this program has taught me to do is to be uncomfortable and push myself further than I thought I could be. And that was a child, you'd look at her and the way she carried herself, you would think that she had it all together. And she was a lot more self-reflective than I am, you know, and it was pretty incredible. So I'll keep you up to date. We'll start to have some meetings on that, and I'll let you know where we're going with it. And then the other thing is, I just wanted to let you know that the electrical buses or the zero emission bus conversation is kicking off. I volunteered to be on a BOCES study group. Our first meeting's tomorrow after our superintendent's meeting in Syracuse. But we need to start looking at that potential. We also, in our last construction meeting, talked with our architects. We're going to have a meeting here in a week or so, and start to look at what it might take for Homer to put an infrastructure in place in order to be able to accommodate that requirement, which right now stands that starting in 2027, the only types of buses that can be purchased are zero emission buses, with our full fleet needing to be zero emission by 2035. And while that sounds like a long way away, it really isn't. So we'll keep you up to date on that as well. Questions about either of those things?
ROTC, do they just have Mexico school district students, or do they?
Yeah, no, they have had this year, yes, they have about 85 students, all Mexico students this year. But what the lieutenant colonel had said is that in years past, they have had other students from other schools in that BOCES. He said, though, that they would come for a half day. He said the real value that they find in the program is not in the 40 minutes a day that they're in the class, but the lunchtime when they all come in, and the after school, and if the kids need to shuffle back and forth to their schools, it makes it more difficult to do.
Yeah.
And you know, so we would want to look, even if BOCES, OCM brings something like that in, at least we would want to have a north site and a south site, you know, Onondaga site and a Cortland County site, and talk about the logistics of that. But that's, you know, getting way ahead of the conversation.
So how often do they use that jungle gym?
Say again?
That jungle gym? Like it's like an adult jungle gym in the back there?
Yeah,
How
it's
often?
it's a regular, because they get 1 credit per school year, but then they can also get PE credit through this ROTC program. So that's part of that, what they use for that portion of the program. Yeah, I did not do it, no. I would have, but I had my suit.
Insurance doesn't cover it.
Yeah, and I was afraid I'd probably rip something, so,
That looks amazing.
a muscle, I mean, not my suit. So, yeah, no, it was impressive, really impressive.
Yeah.
And that's what I have.
Great.
Right.
I think that brings us to our board presentation, so.
Yes, and Michael is going to walk you through the ever-popular reserves plan. This was the document that we shared, if you remember, at the last meeting. And so he'll run you through it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So every year is required by New York State law. We have to put forward a reserves plan. Again, it's a proactive plan looking at a 5-year lookout as far as the use of reserves, where we're at with reserves. And again, the comptroller requires this, and the comptroller actually goes through our audits every year to make sure that we're putting this forward. So our first reserve is called the EBLAR Reserve, or the Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve. Every year when we go through the audit, we have to calculate our liability reserve as it relates to our retirees, or payout as far as when an individual retires from Homer School District, if they have health insurance, the district continues to pay 50% of their health insurance. They pay half, the district pays half. So in that number is included in the budget. Years ago, what they put into place was districts were allowed to put aside money into reserves to help offset that. So if something catastrophic happened, you had a reserve where you could go through and look at your full current pension liability. So the current pension liability, this is not for 1 year, this is a lookout over a few years, as far as everyone that you would have in place and what you would have to pay out. There's also a portion of this too, where somebody has unused sick leave, and that turns into a payment towards their retirement, health insurance, any personal leave, holiday leave, vacation time. In some situations, people have vacation payouts. If you look at our budget area at the very bottom, you're going to see something called other benefits. That's something that would pay out that in some respects. However, what we call retirement awards that are calculated, or retirement incentives, that's not included as part of this reserve. So as you can see, we're funded at 1.8 million. Again, the current pension liability, if you look at that, and it's calculated by our auditors, is about 2.7 million. We don't look to use this reserve. Again, this was put in place for something if catastrophic were to happen. You can transfer this to other reserves. If down the line, 10 years from now, you're doing a building project and you're saying, you know, we could handle to take a $500,000 burden off our taxpayers. You could transfer out of this reserve and put it in your capital reserve. So there are means to transfer that money out. The next part is the unemployment insurance reserve. So again, when you look at this, we want to look at targeting if we have folks, if there's again something catastrophic happen, you have layoffs that go across the district, you want to fund between 1% and 5% of your payroll through this reserve, or to have it in your back pocket. With this, we're at about 1.2%. We've been very fortunate. We've had over 30 retirements in the last 5 years. So with that, we've been able to add programming. We haven't had to cut positions, so we've not been in a position where people were taking any kind of unemployment on behalf of the district. One of the things that we're looking at now, especially with COVID coming on, is that there are different loopholes in the unemployment system in New York State. So we're looking now to shore those things up, where people may come in as a part-time employee, they may come in as a sub, and may be entitled to unemployment, much like if somebody was a seasonal worker, say in a construction job. So that, again, has not hit us on any grand scale, but with the $249,000 in our reserve right now, we're in a good spot. But again, you would hope nothing catastrophic happens because you could deplete that reserve. And again, I'm going to go through all of them, then I have a chart at the end, which I know that you've seen. And if you have questions, just feel free to ask as we go through. So again, our retirement contribution reserve, this is mainly at this point for our employee retirement system, again, to offset costs. In the budget, if you're looking to fill a gap to pay for ERS, ERS right now for us is around $425,000 a year. We do have it offset by a minimal amount of employee contributions, but if we got to a point, much like TRS, that you only have to pay in for a certain number of years, and you're not bringing on new employees, you don't have that employee share going into pay. So again, with our reserve, we're funded at 1.2 million, 12% of our payroll, and again, we were allowed in 2021 to start up our TRS reserve. So prior to that, the teacher's retirement system, there was no reserve for that. Money goes into these reserves and several of the other reserves if we're over our 4% fund balance. Again, you're able to hold in a savings account 4% of that year's budget. So if you're over that amount when you do your audit, you're able to take that money and designate reserves for that money to go in. So in 2021, we were over the 4% by $27,000. We established a reserve, we put money in that reserve. So again, as we look in the future, if we're over that 4%, this is an area where we want to start to fund and build into that reserve. Our capital reserve. So with the capital reserve, you have to, the board has to, again, approve a resolution to create a new capital reserve. Then you go to the voters, and they vote to establish it. So for projects in the past, we've had money, again, we're over the 4%, we put money in the capital reserve. 1 year in the projects, going back, when we looked at, oh, sorry, not to that one yet, but I'll get to that. So we looked at workers' comp. Workers' comp was funded when we were self-insured at $2.4 million. The comptroller said, that's way too much. So what did we do? We took $1.2 million out of that reserve, transferred it to the capital reserve, and helped pay for our capital project, the 2 capital projects. So again, with this, when we look at our building condition survey, it's good that if we have money over the 4%, to look at our retirement reserves and to really look at our capital reserves as well. This is something, again, we've got $132,000. it will be expended in this current capital project. Once we go through, so voters voted in May of '22 to set up this fund, and we will go back through, we can still add to it, but then once the term has run out, then you go back to the voters and establish a new one. The tax tertiary reserve, and again, if you're good at crossword puzzles and this ever comes up, you can use this as a reference. Tax tertiary, what happens is we have homeowners and businesses, especially businesses when they come into town, or they start up or they move locations. They may come in and they contest an assessment. They may be assessed at $2 million and they come back and say, I believe my assessment shouldn't be $2 million, it should be $200,000. They file paperwork and then it goes to court. What happens in that process is that the district is responsible to make sure whatever that taxable amount would be, for up to 5 years, you have to keep that amount in a reserve. So what happens if it turns back around and they get the judgment in their favor, then the district would have to go ahead and refund their paid taxes. One of the reasons why we haven't seen a lot of this with new businesses is because of New York State's pilot program. People pay into pilots for a certain number of years. But we do have people contest it. Right now, we keep a running spreadsheet. Right now, our balance is at $100,000. About 4 years ago, it was at $200,000. But we had a couple of the tax tertiaries come off the rolls. So they weren't found to be in favor of those who submitted the claims to our benefit. What happens to this money? Again, every year the board votes to reestablish this fund. And if it's not used, it goes back into general fund. So that money gets released back into general fund.
It's not just contested by new businesses, it's contested by...
Homeowners, taxpayers,
Right,
yes.
yeah, I just wanted to make it clarify. Yeah.
Correct, yes. And that's one of the things too, is that, and probably we've all seen in our tax bills, is that equalization rates have really changed in this area, assessments have changed. So that really impacts folks' tax bills. And it could do it from year to year. And again, with assessments in some areas, assessments weren't done for 10 to 15 years. And they came due within the last couple of years. I can tell you the exact places because those are where we get the most phone calls from. So workers' comp reserve. The workers' comp reserve, for years we were self-funded. We were self-insured. So if there was a workers' comp claim across the district, it was paid out of the reserve. As I said, at one time it was over $2 million. We started to spend out of this reserve because now we are not self-funded. We participate with PERMA, and they are our insurance. So we have a workers' comp insurance. However, the reason why we've not spent this down or just moved it to another reserve yet, we have a plan to kind of spend it out every year to pay the bill to PERMA. But we're also on the line because there were some claims that were filed in the meantime, from the time that we were self-insured to the time that we went to PERMA. We want to make sure that we have money in place in case anything is found on a judgment for the district to have to pay that before we move that money. So again, you can move this money, and how you decide to do it and transfer, to other reserves. So again, in the future, if you were to transfer out of this, if PERMA is, or workers' comp is a permanent line item in our budget, if we're not looking to use that as a revenue, this would be an area where I would suggest you'd move to capital reserve, or you'd move to your TRS reserve. The next part is our mandatory reserve for debt service. This is different than the capital reserve. This reserve is set up to pay our current obligations. So our building projects, believe it or not, when we used to buy buses rather than lease buses, so any of those obligations, this money can be used yearly in the budget to be able to offset that cost. For 23-24, because foundation aid came in higher, we didn't use anything out of this reserve. What we've done in the past, we've allocated about $300,000 out of that reserve. That's looking at about 1.9% of a tax increase. So we've offset taxes by using the reserve. So when you look at our 6-year plan for reserves, you can see that we really don't designate any big changes. You'll see from 22-23 in the capital reserve that we are going to utilize that money. The workers' compensation reserve, if we earmark $100,000 a year to pay out our bill for PERMA, we can do that. And you can see that declining balance. The other part, the debt service reserve. As I said, in 23-24, we're not using that money. There have been other years that we've designated that to kind of be a buffer or to have just that amount in the budget as a fail-safe. And there have been years that we put it out there to use, we haven't used it. Currently, and looking at just following the process and the plan as we develop the budget, we would look to start adding the use of that reserve back in. And again, just forecasting it using it on a yearly basis, that reserve would be exhausted by 2038-39. I can happily say that that number, if it went back a few years ago, we haven't used the reserve, we've earmarked it, that was to be depleted by 2034-35. So we'd be able to push that forward a little bit. Again, we put it in the budget along with our fund balance at $680,000 to offset those unknown costs or those things that we didn't expect in the district as we put together the budget. So I threw a lot at you. I promised you in an executive session that I kind of wouldn't go too far down the rabbit hole with all this information, but any questions? Go ahead.
So just out of curiosity, some of these funds, you included the target, the reserve target percentage. I was just wondering, what are the reserve target percentages for the ones that weren't included?
So when I included the reserve targets, those are the ones that I put it in because the comptroller wants us to follow that. And the other ones, there aren't any suggested ones.
Okay.
I could go back through with budget and finance and we could look at to see where people feel comfortable with that. But really the reserve targets, when the comptroller puts this information out, they're saying to you, this is where they feel comfortable
Right.
with what you're using. But
So do you have a rule of thumb that you like to apply to them?
To be honest with you, I've never touched EBLAR, not myself, but the district, since I've been here 12 years, has never touched EBLAR.
Okay.
That's the same amount that when I walked in to this position, it was there. Unemployment reserve, same thing. ERS reserve, we've used a little bit of. I'd like to see more money back in the capital reserve. We've been able to do that with offsets over that 4%. Really, that $500,000 that I threw out there, I think is a healthy amount to have in that reserve to offset payments for taxpayers. Again, workers' comp, because we're paying out for it, we know that we can't exhaust that all the way down. I think it's healthy to have money in there to help offset at least a portion of that bill every year. And again, debt service, when I first came into the position, there was gap elimination where they took millions and millions of dollars away in foundation aid. That number for debt service, even prior to me, was up around 10 million. So as I put out that it would be exhausted by 38, 39, I would hope that we don't get to that point. But again, we do put that in there to make sure we have that safety valve in the budget. But those are my prognostications with it, Emily, but I think it's always good to have the conversation of if folks see to be comfortable, maybe see something that I don't
All right.
in that.
So how often in the last few years have you seen some of these funds go over the 4% where you had them available to put in the reserve? Like, what's your average?
So when we came back after the gap elimination, we were able to put some money back in. We've played it pretty close to the vest as far as taxing the public. So if we went out and just said generically we build the budget on 4%, we raise taxes by 4%, we did that, you'd probably have the ability to dump money back in. We've had, on average, the last 12 years, about 0.8% tax increase. So we've kind of weighed that against it. Do you want to get in a position where you have some extra money at the end, or do you, how close do you want to play it to the vest? And I guess that's my best answer for it, is that we've been really cognizant of not raising that tax amount. Not saying that you do it and you can add money in, but we've had some better years with money coming back in. You know, we're not through the full look at this year's budget. We're halfway through the year. We don't know if they're gonna take money back from us foundation aid wise, what they promised us. So a year like this, we may have the ability to go back over 4%, but it's never a guarantee. So, you know, that's the biggest thing of how you can fund them. You know, I would say that's the safest way to fund them. You can go out to the public and say, we're gonna raise taxes or do this X, Y, and Z with the hopes that we're gonna throw money back into reserves. You know, we've done it the kind of the different way with taxes, and yet not touching the reserves at all.
Right,
So,
right. And can you just remind me again where the 400,000 or so is going every year? Is that operating expenses or?
operating expenses. So
Okay.
that 308,000, our
Oh.
debt service is
Yeah.
anywhere, it's been up around 4 million.
Okay.
It's lower than that this year. So that money has gone to offset the current debt.
Okay.
And that you have to, so I can't say, so say in a wonderful thing, you didn't have any debt, I couldn't expend the money out of that reserve. I could only expend the money out of that reserve to cover existing debt.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
Brings us to new business. With that, I'll accept a motion to approve the warrants and claims auditors report.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, then for information, you have the investment summary as well as the budget status report and revenue status report. Our next item for action is a motion to approve the reports from the Committee on Preschool and Special Education.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I know, somebody needs to stand for credit. I was gonna ask Chuck to do it, but I thought that would be.
Wait a minute.
Where is he?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion to approve the report from the Committee on Special Education.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion to approve the 24-25 budget development calendar.
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so we just heard about it, it's in motion to approve the 23-24 reserves plan.
So moved.
Questions or comments?
Figure after giving all those questions, I better.
That's appreciated, thank you. I do appreciate the questions.
He does.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so motion to approve the 23-24 district calendar revision.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Is it just that half day that shifted?
Yes, that's the only change, short instructional day on April 8th for the eclipse.
So I had somebody ask me, if we follow the BOCES calendar, how come BOCES was closed the Friday before Christmas?
We don't always follow, we follow it to the best of our ability, but
Okay.
BOCES has to make decisions for Onondaga County schools, Madison County schools, and Cortland County schools, so we're not always in lockstep. Next year, as we're in the process now of building next year's, there are gonna be a couple of days when we're not consistent with the BOCES calendar. We try to do, we do actually a pretty good job, but it's not 100%.
So will we feel the benefits of that in June?
Perhaps. Perhaps.
Okay.
I can't make any promises, of course.
I basically took it as a promise, so.
Additional questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion to approve the disposal of items from the intermediate school.
So move.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I just wanna say that there's 27 copies of the Chinese New Year that's getting thrown out. That's the dragon, but that's actually the year that we're entering into. So maybe by chance, they wanna put them out and about for people that would be interested, because we are entering the year of the dragon.
We do
So-
that with a lot of the books, unless they're
Well, it says here that they are
unrepairable or,
not used in 20 years. So that's why she's getting
yeah,
rid
so
of them.
those
But
would be, yeah.
because
ones
it's
that
the
could
year
be
of the
left.
dragon, I think there are people that might be interested and just don't know that that's this year.
Maybe they have a newer version.
No,
Okay.
not in Chinese theory, the dragon's the dragon.
Think she meant the book.
Oh, my bad.
Sorry.
But I agree with you 100%. I like to read the menu and the little placement they give you.
Let's see if we can steer this shit back around here. Any other questions or comments?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion to accept the following donations from Yemen Real Estate and from the Clevelands and from Heidi Effing.
So moved.
Second,
Questions or comments?
Thank you.
that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Motion to approve a field trip request to take the JV and varsity baseball teams to Philadelphia, May 4th to 5th of 2024.
So, yeah, second.
Questions or comments?
Chuck, you're not on here.
What's it?
I'll be there.
Oh.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion to accept the resignation of Charles Tomino from the position of board member effective January 9th, 2024.
So move.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you for the service. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? As Kelly slides the plate away.
Did you just swipe my name?
You can't talk to members of the public yet, Chuck.
No, so anyway.
Sign up right over there, Charlie.
2 minutes.
Motion to approve personnel with the exception of the high school musical extracurricular positions.
So moved.
Second,
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion to approve the co-curricular positions for the 23-24 high school musical.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? All right. Just keep turning my pages here. I think that moves us to informational items, Superintendent.
It does. We have a whole host of fundraising updates. My personal favorite happens to be DECA selling honey. There are a number of things there that our kids will be involved with, helping to support their groups. We have a staff update. We have an OCM BOCES occupational therapist that'll be at the junior, senior high school, so letting you know about that. And then the last thing was a budget or a budget guidelines draft. This, it was in your packet. It's 5 bullets that we utilize each and every year. It's been this draft for at least since I've had the position. These are things we take into consideration as we're building the budget. We want to obviously make sure that we maximize program impact, use our strategic plan initiatives to drive our decision-making, adopt the voice of the community, make sure we follow the law as it relates to tax levy limits and the limit process, and then we want to obviously maximize the impact of the aid that we get from New York State and the federal government. So that's the draft. If you have any comments or recommend any changes to it, let me know, because we'll bring it back at our next meeting to adopt.
Thank you,
That's
Superintendent.
what I have.
Yeah, great. This is the time when we would hear from our community, and nobody has signed up, and anybody?
I would like to say thank you for allowing me to serve on the board for 5.5 years. On to my next stage, but I'll miss this on Tuesday nights, but I can watch it on TV.
And I'm sure you will.
Oh, I will.
Thank you, Chuck.
Well, I'll
Thank you, Chuck.
critique notes from Chuck. So we had no board committees, but we did have district committee, it looks like community engagement.
Yes, Josh and I will tag team this. We had our latest community engagement committee meeting on Monday. The agenda consisted of us taking a look at the actual charge of our community engagement group as we kind of wrap things up for this strategic plan and then plan for the next. We looked at data that we had gathered from the various surveys that we had administered over a 3-year period to gauge where we are in relation to our goals. And while we were close on 2 of them, actually almost if we'd round up instead of rounding down, we would have hit it. The group recognized that you're never really finished with any of those things. So we spent a good portion of the meeting looking at some of those other action items that we had identified in the original plan and rated those on a scale of 1 to 5 for their level of importance as we sit here now. 5 being it's really important to make sure we make some movement on, and 1 not so much. And we'll use that as a piece of data as we continue to move forward. We also spent time talking about questions that we felt as a group that were most appropriate to ask our focus groups, so that we can get some additional feedback in building the next plan. Josh, did I leave anything out?
We also just talked about strategies to encourage membership into the group.
Yep.
and keep it lively as it's moving into its 5th year.
Questions for Joshua? And I know student engagement meets tomorrow.
ELC meets the next day.
Yep, and our social emotional group, Chris isn't here, but yes,
We don't
Aaron.
have another date set, but Chris and I are meeting tomorrow.
Awesome, great. So we'll continue pushing forward with all those.
Great. Thanks.
Can we get the email or just the list of committees we signed up for?
Sure.
Because I thought I joined the SEL committee, but I didn't get the invite to the last
Okay,
meeting.
I'll resend it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, brings us to board member activities.
I did some stuff. I went to a hockey game that we won. That was awesome. I went to the buzzer beater girls basketball game. That was another really awesome one. Both teams are really young, so I think it's gonna be exciting to see the next couple of years. I'm figuring that's the COVID fallout, that we have such young teams. And I caught a basketball game on the new bleachers in the junior high. And I think the ADA part of them is very cool, and it was put into use immediately. So I didn't even know that that was an option. But I like that we have that and that it's used already. And I like that they're there, so. But I feel bad saying what I went to, and it points out what I didn't go to, and it's purely because of
Well, there's so much.
my life. I'm just too busy to, it's not that I don't support all of the events. I just literally can't fit it all in. Yeah.
All right, upcoming events, Superintendent.
Yes, we have a all-county choir festival that will take place Friday and Saturday at Cortland High School. We have a number of our students taking part in that, as well as the Shakespeare competition on Saturday at the high school. And if you look, something for next year is already sneaking up on us. On January 17th, we'll have our 8th grade high school orientation and parent night. So the wheels of progress keep rolling, so it's all good. That's what I got.
Well, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I just wanted to see who was gonna take it.
Thank you, everybody.